I'm just going to show you this picture, and can you just share Emma's story?
Maybe. Think about the best kid on your team. Think about the kid that you know is surrounded by success, surrounded by expectations, and everybody has that one girl on their team or that one guy on their team that's a go-to. And they're projected to be successful. They're successful in the classroom, they're successful on the ball field. They're also that person that helps everybody else get better. And you just know that's the girl or the guy that you don't have to worry about. It's like a relief as a coach. And you kind of wish you had everybody on your team that had a little bit of Emma. And I think my work now with her story is being really, as you had mentioned, trying to be an activist as a former coach to say, we've got to redefine the conversation around listening, and we have to redefine the conversation around creating conditions for every single player to make sure that practice is an outlet, that this game that you play is an outlet for them. Because as great as she was, as phenomenal as a teammate as she was, and the kid that just really had everything, there was another conversation going on inside, and she was suffocating. And it was just too much to handle. And she was the individual that could keep it inside. And so she ended up being that go-to player on January 22nd. She had had a wonderful weekend, was a go-to player. She got on her Stingray. She went to the forest right by where she plays locally in Southern California. And she hung herself. And for me, it really stopped our community because the softball community, because it makes you say, how can I create the conditions where they're safe emotionally, where they're trusted, and they can be vulnerable on good days and bad days? Because perfectionism lives in these young student athletes, whether they're the best kid or they're the worst kid on your team. You will have players that are suffering from perfectionism.
And you want people to realize that there's a good possibility they have an Emma on their team.
Yeah, I want to say it to you that I hope you say that every day. I hope you look at her and say, she doesn't look like she has any problems. Because we're looking, our default setting right now is to look for signals. The people that coached her, did they have any signals? And what I want to share with everybody I touch is, don't wait to look for a signal to react to. Create the conditions to be proactive, where every student athlete, no matter where they are on the spectrum of performance anxiety, perfectionism, mental health, and God forbid, they take their life, that they can say, these people who pull my teammates together and run practices 3 times a week, 5 times a week, that is a great place to be. I'm not saying we as coaches are responsible to make sure that everybody's healthy, but there is no doubt student athletes' environments at practice are one of their most vulnerable times every day. And it's an important place where we as a community can drip personal excellence versus perfectionism. And I think we can start to turn this wheel. It's a big wheel that we're in with our millennials, the digital age, 24-hour news cycle. You have a lot going against you, and there's no way you can solve all of it. But when you're done, when you're here, they come back and they don't really talk about how great you were on breaking down how to hit the curveball. They're not going to come back and talk about how you set up your defense. They're not going to talk about you made such a great call in the 4th quarter. They're going to come back and they're going to talk about how you treated them.
And maybe the most important skill that coaches could work on to attack this issue is listening.
Yeah, listening and wherever you are evolved on your leadership journey, some are like, listening to what? Well, I don't need to listen to anything, I'm in charge. But your assistants are smarter and more in tune many times than you give them credit. Your upperclassmen have a sense of what's going on, listen to them, create the conditions for them to be heard. And then, as always, UCLA's foundation was the game doesn't know how old you are. So listen to the ones that are just coming in. And sometimes you'll be amazed at what comes out of their mouth, both in a positive and a negative way. But after all, they're kids. And your job is to get them to talk about how you were an engineer of belief more than anything. Your job is to engineer belief in those student athletes to be able to go out and do anything that they choose to do, not so much have 7 plays on how to run the first and third.
What is your goal of sharing these 2 stories today? What would you want them to take away?
What I would want you to think about is how much impact you can have on a student athlete and not judge who you think needs more help than the other. And try not to be reactive and say, no, I'm going to flip this, I'm going to flip it right now, and I'm going to create these new conditions to listen to what your staff needs and what your players need and how you can create those conditions to make it the best 2 hours of their day. And may you always do the 2-hour test. And I always say to the 2-hour test, will your kid leave your program and say, it was so great to play for you because it was the best 2 hours of my day.
We're inspired, 1, by your story, but 2, by your ability to mobilize large groups of people and raise awareness around this issue. Let's give it up for Sue.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Dave.